Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get started on the legs. As we do already have the cube out here, that's the dimensions that we need for the overall project, we're going to make a copy of it and use that to start with the legs. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and select this cube and hit Shift D. That, as you can see, gives us a copy here in our scene collection. Now this eye up here will let us hide stuff. It's one of two ways that we can hide, and when you have something stacked like this is currently, that's probably the easiest way to hide. So let's just go ahead and unclick that. That removes it from our view and we can't interact with it. So now we have the one that we made the copy of. We're going to go ahead and rename this leg. And then we're going to tap our N key to come here. Okay, we don't need the active tool. We do, however, need the transform. Because the individual legs are square, we're going to make this square before we size it. We will not be touching the Z because it's already at the right height. So we want to take the X and make it the same as the Y. And now that we have it like that, we're going to, I very much like to work by the numbers. Some people like to eyeball stuff. I like to be more exact. We're going to go back into X-ray here so that we can see. And we are going to hit S for scale, but then we're going to hit Shift Z so that we do not affect the Z. And then we're just going to slowly take this in. If you're too close when you're doing this, it will make it much harder. But that's okay. If you find you have that problem, you can always stop and redo it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and line it up with this line here. So let me scale, Shift Z again. And okay. Now we can go back into solid view. Okay, I lied. We don't want to be in solid view. And I might have that a bit big yet. No, it actually looks pretty okay with the proportion of the shelf itself. That's one of the reasons why I like to do that, because when I see this, it looks big to me, or too thick. So I would have just automatically sized it down. That doesn't mean I won't wind up doing that later, but as of right now, it looks okay with the size of all of that. So now we're going to move this over to here. We're going to toggle the X-ray, which you can either click up here or hit Alt-Z. Okay, that's not giving enough, so we're going to go ahead and go wireframe. And I want to move this to right here, so we're going to grab on the X and just move it to right here. Now if we go back into our front view and solid view, we will now see that it's there. And let me, next thing we're going to do is we're going to hit Control A and apply all transformations. This does a couple of things. It makes all of this to where it's showing it at 1, and it also resets our orientation to the cursor, which we're getting ready to add a mirror modifier, and the mirror will mirror according to the orientation. So if you come here to the wrench looking icon, it's the modifier properties, add modifier, and then come here to mirror, and that will give us 2 of them. Now I may not have that far enough out, so I'm not going to apply this yet. What I will do is I will look here and see how that looks to this. And yeah, I can take this out a little bit farther. So I'm going to go back into wireframe, back into top view. Let's see here. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and move this out 1 more. So grab X. Oh, sorry, I should have gone into edit mode. Right now where I'm in object mode, it is moving our object origin, which is why it's not, the mirror is also moving. If we do this, if we hit tab and go into edit mode though, our point of origin will stay where it's at. So now we grab X and move it out 1 more. And as you can see, that moved too. That's looking a bit too wide now to me, so let's split the difference. And put it there. Now that we have that done, we can go ahead, come back here, hide the cube. And by the way, this wrench icon shows that we have an unapplied modifier. Now one more thing we're going to do though before we apply this modifier. Even though we're not doing the texturing this week, it helps when you're doing things like this, that the seams are going to be pretty straightforward to mark them before you apply modifiers. Doing this will save you a lot of work later, because it will not only then have it on the one you marked, but it will have it on the one created by the mirror, or when we do the array here in a little bit, it will have all of them already marked. Save you a bunch of time. So we're going to start off by going into edge selection mode, which is the 2 on your keyboard. We're going to select this edge. Then we're going to come up here, select this one, this one, and then we're going to select the same ones down here on the bottom. Selecting these edges will give us a nice clean unwrap. And then we want to right mouse click and mark seam. And even if you do this at this point and something happens and later on you decide you need to change it to a different seam, you will still find it, or change one of the seams, you'll still find it to be a lot easier than if you are trying to create all the seams from the get-go. So now we are going to go back into object mode, so tab, and we are going to apply our mirror modifier. And now I'll show you what I was talking about with the seams. As you can see, both sides are now marked just how you need them to be. So it will save you a lot of work. Okay, now let me tab back here for a minute. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of shelves. So, okay, I should not have applied that mirror modifier yet. So I'm going to Z back to it. And then I'm going to go back into edit here. Like I said, we have 5 sets of shelves. But we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 crossbars. So we're going to add some edge loops. Which that is Control R. Okay, I'm not far enough out for you to see this, so I'm going to zoom out. Control R. Now you see where it put the little yellow bit around? We're going to go ahead and left mouse click, and then we're going to drag that up. Now this is where we are going to be eyeballing it, because we want them pretty square. If they're not exact, it's not going to hurt anything. Okay, so that gives us our top one. And then we need the ones for the 5 shelves. Now what I do so that I get my spacing correct on here is I will come through here and I will go ahead and add 5 because that will center them. And then I just need to worry about adding 1 on each side of that. So let me come through here, Control R. Now as you can see, that put it between the top one and that one. And that's because that's now its own section. So any edge loops that are added will work between those. So now let's bring that down. Which, okay, another way I could be doing this is to make sure it's exact or close to. Okay, now instead of adding the second one here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my Alt key, hold it down, and left mouse click on that. That selects that entire loop. Oops, go back into my side view here. And if you hit GG on your keyboard, that will allow you to move it and stay in line with the mesh. Now we're going to come down here and do the same thing here. Control R, move it down. Then do our Alt left mouse click, GG. Like I said, these don't have to be perfect, but you want them to look square. And we're going to do, oops. Now see, that happened because I was too far away from the edge here. If you get your edge loop when you go to add it wrong, just move your cursor and it will let you put it where in the direction that you need it. And there again, by doing all of this before the mirror modifier is applied, it will already be on the second leg as well. Okay, now and there is a reason why we are doing this, because when we go to add our bars, or when we make our bars going across, doing it this way, we won't have the same issues with texture flicker and stuff like that that we would if we just tried to add a bar. Okay, and one last one here. Okay, so now all that's done. We will come back into solid view. We're going to tab into object mode. Now we will apply our mirror modifier. And then we're going to tab back into edit. And as you can see, both sides now have all of this. But now I'm going to go into face select here. So that's the 3 on the on the keyboard. And I'm going to select just these spaces here. And then come over here and do the same thing. And you can select multiples by keeping your shift key held down. Now I'm going to delete faces. So I hit the X key and I select faces. Now in my vertex select mode, I am going to select those, and I think I can bridge it like this. So let's okay, where is I am not seeing, here it is, bridge edge loops. I think we can do, yep, that worked perfect. So now we're going to do that with these ones. Select these 4, and then these 4, go edge, bridge edge loops. Now, as the front leg also connects through like that, now is where we're going to go through though, and we're going to unhide this. We're going to come back here into top view. We're going to toggle back in so that we can see everything here into wireframe. We want to make sure everything is selected. And then we want to grab this back on the Y. And just move it back like this to the back of and doing this will also let us see if we need to adjust the width of our legs, because what we're going to do now is, while still in edit mode, and in top view, we are going to shift D to copy this. We're going to grab it on the Y and pull it forward. Now we are going to rotate this on the X by 90 degrees. So that will be, or excuse me, not on the X, on the Z. Rotate Z 90. Now we're going to grab this back on the Y again. So this one here is just at the front of this. Now, we already know that we don't have a third bar back here, so we're going to be deleting one part of this. You want to go into your side view. Come up here to a corner and just drag your mouse down, capturing only the vertices on the post closest to the back. And now we are going to delete this. So X and vertices. Okay, and go back into front view. I am going to temporarily hide my background image, which is my empty. I'm going to hide the cube again. And now we're going to be adding, well, okay, I should have marked these already, but we will do that momentarily. We need to add some more edge loops. So, one, now you'll notice I'm only adding one at a time. My reason for that, I'll show you here in just a moment. And then you want to move them so they line up with the squares for the front leg. Now the reason why I didn't just add two, which you can do with the mouse wheel, is they would have been farther apart. And yes, you can still do that and then move, line up one and do a GG to line up the other one, whichever way you prefer. In fact, I'll do that on this one. Okay, let me go ahead and get that one lined up. And then Alt, left mouse click, GG, and move that one in. Okay, edge loop, line up, edge loop. Whoops, I dropped that one too soon. So, Alt, and once we get these edge loops added, we will do the same thing with removing the faces like we did on the other. Now also, I want to point out the reason why I made sure that we were in edit mode when we added, or when we copied the leg and rotated it, was so it was already part of the same mesh. If we had done it in object mode, it would have been two separate meshes and we would have had to have joined them before we could connect them. Sometimes you want to have them separated. Other times, like this, it's easier to just go ahead and do it and edit. Okay, now I've got all those added. So now, just like we did before, we want to be back here in solid mode. Go into face select with the 3 on the keyboard and just select these faces. X and then delete faces. 1 for your vertex select. And make sure you select your edge loops. Now, I'm not sure if we can do all of them at once, so I'm going to try that. And worst case, a Z back. Otherwise, we get all of these knocked out at one time. Sometimes things we think should work don't always work. Okay, so I have them all selected. Now we're going to try this. And it did not work, which I was afraid of that. So, like I said, worst case, that just means that we start over. Or I start over. And you get to learn that by me doing it. So, we'll take this one opening at a time. Bridge edge loops. Now, on this last one, I'm going to show you another way that I know to do this, because while, yes, in this case, we can do bridge edge loops, there are times you will run into that bridge edge loops will not be the option that you can use. So for this one, what we're going to do is we are going to select the bottom 2 vertex on that side, the bottom 2 vertex on that side, and then we're going to hit the F key to fill. Then we're going to go into our edge select, which is 2 on the keyboard. We're going to select this edge, and then we're going to hit fill, fill, and fill. Now, the problem with that, the others I can almost guarantee you are completely right side out. Sometimes doing the fill like that, it will put it with the wrong face out. So to check this, we're going to come up here to the viewport overlays. We're going to check face orientation. At this stage, well, I shouldn't say this stage, anytime you check that and you're not in a textured bit, if your normals are correct, everything will show as blue except for your seams, where you have your seams marked. And as you can see, it is. I will, however, show you what it would look like if it was incorrect. So we will hit 3 on the keyboard, select this top face. I'm going to hit Alt-N for my normals, and I'm going to flip that one. Okay, now that one is now red. What that means is in SL, that red section would be invisible. The face would be inside, which, believe it or not, there's actually times you want the faces inside. If you've seen the aquarium I did, the way I did the water and everything was by having the very inside of it inside out. So that, while most of the time it's not something you want, every once in a while it is. Let me Control Z back there. Now we have our first leg done. We're going to come here into object mode. Oh, we're also going to turn off the face orientation because, I'm sorry, that it gets to me after a bit. Now we are going to apply all of our transformations. According to our numbers here, they should already be applied. But as we, well, let me go ahead and move it first and then we'll apply it, because we're going to be using another mirror modifier. And okay, I'm getting ahead of myself again. We want to finish marking seams, and then we will move it and use a mirror modifier. So let's go back into edit mode. We're going to start here on this top one. We want to be in edge select mode, which is 2 on the keypad. And we want to just select these edges so that our legs are still okay, but this will split the bars, allowing us to have them as an easy unwrap. You also want to try to make sure whenever you're marking seams and have them in an area of the least visibility. Which is why I selected like this one here and this one. They're not going to be very visible. Now we want to mark all the way around here and here, here and here, and then one seam going across. So let's go ahead and do that on all of these supports. And let's see, I should actually be able to, because it won't matter if it remarks a seam that's already been marked. So let me see if I can. Okay, no, it's not going to let me just do that. Of course not. Oops. And if you do accidentally do like I did and not have the shift key held down, you can Control Z back to where you do and not have to re-grab those seams. Control Z is most definitely your friend in Blender. Now, another thing I should warn about, I have this really bad habit of I don't think to save my files as often as I should. And I know better. I have had to redo hours of work because of that fact. So before we go any farther, we're going to come up here and we're going to save as. And it's in our blend files here. Class shelves, and then save as. I don't like the autosave because just like I have had work lost because I forgot to save it in time, I have also had to redo work because I had autosave overwrite a file that was with a mistake too far back for me to Control Z, and then I did not have a good working file and had to redo. Personal preferences there. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Now I got one leg completely marked. We're going to come through here and do this one. And this is one of the reasons too why you want zoom to mouse, because it really does help when you're maneuvering through here. Now, is it going to let me? Nope. So let me just, yeah, that one's. And yes, I know this all seems tedious, but doing this now will actually save you a bunch of having to do this later. Because we're going to be mirroring this leg for the other side. And so, of course, well, once we have this done on here, we don't have to worry about it for the other side. And you do want to make sure you don't mark sharp. And I'll show you here how you can tell. Because, okay, as you can see, my marked seams are red. If you mark sharp, it's going to be blue. And speaking of which, that's the cliff beam I was talking about right there. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. Come through here. And let me select these. Mark seam. Okay, now we have all of our seams marked. Now we are ready to go ahead and tab into object mode. Control A, apply all transformations. We want to be able to see our cube here, but we do want to make sure the leg is selected. Go into your wireframe. You want to be Z and 7 for top view. Sorry about that. Then we want to grab this on the X. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Just, you know, make sure it lines up some. Now, as I told you earlier, when you move it in edit mode, your origin stays at the 3D cursor. I moved it in object mode now. There's two ways that you can get it back to where your cursor is at the, or where your origin is at your 3D cursor at this point. One is simply by applying all transformations. That will reset it. The other, if you come up here to object and you have set origin, geometry to origin would move your geometry, which we don't want. Origin to geometry, well, that's where it's already at. But here we have origin to 3D cursor. So that's the one we want. And as you can see, it's now reset. So now we're ready to add our mirror modifier. Come back up here to modifier. Select mirror. And that has both legs now in place. As we've already got our seams and everything, we can go ahead and apply this one. Go and hide the cube, come back into solid frame, and that's the legs. So in the next video we will work on the shelves.